Season 3 of Landman is not just another chapter in the oil business story. It's a shift, a turn in tone, in focus, and in danger. In the earlier seasons, the show made things feel clearer. There were greedy executives, reckless deals, and men who thought power meant being the loudest voice in the room. Conflict came from clashes, anger, ego. Everyone knew who the bad decisions belonged to. But Season 3 quietly removes that comfort. Now the danger doesn't come from shouting matches or risky deals made in public. It comes from calm choices made behind closed doors. It comes from people who don't look dangerous at all. And this is where everything changes. Because in Season 3, the fight is no longer about oil fields or profit margins. It's about control. Who pulls the strings? Who decides what risks are acceptable? And more importantly, who gets blamed when things go wrong? This season strips away the idea that chaos is the biggest threat. Instead, it shows us something far more unsettling: order, clean decisions, polite conversations, and plans that are designed to protect power, not people. That's why Season 3 feels colder, heavier, more uncomfortable. The show stops asking who is right and starts asking who survives. It begins to show how systems don't need loud villains to hurt people. They only need someone willing to look away. And that's where Cami becomes important. Up until now, Cami has existed on the edge of the story. Never the center of conflict. Never the one throwing threats or raising her voice. She has always been presented as the steady presence, the reasonable one, the person who understands the cost of bad decisions. But Season 3 reframes her role completely. Instead of reacting to chaos, Cami starts shaping it. Not with force, but with timing. Not with commands, but with silence. She doesn't rush. She doesn't panic. She waits for moments when everyone else is desperate enough to listen. This is what makes Season 3 different. The show begins to explore how the most dangerous people are not the ones who make mistakes. They are the ones who let mistakes happen because the outcome works in their favor. Deaths in this season don't feel sudden or shocking. They feel inevitable, like a chain reaction that no one bothered to stop. And that's the scariest part. Because when tragedy happens, there's no clear hand to point at. No villain standing over the damage. Just decisions that made sense to someone. Season 3 forces the audience to question something uncomfortable. What if the real threat isn't greed or anger, but calm logic without empathy? What if the worst harm comes from people who believe they're simply doing what must be done? This is the ground Season 3 stands on. A world where power is quiet, consequences are distant, and responsibility is always pushed onto someone else. And inside this world, Cami doesn't need to become loud or cruel to become dangerous. Cami was never written as a weak character. She was written as a quiet one. From the very beginning of Landman, her power didn't come from authority or position. It came from awareness. She listened more than she spoke. She watched people reveal themselves through stress, greed, and fear. While others fought to be seen, Cami stayed just outside the spotlight, letting everyone assume she wasn't a threat. That assumption is the foundation of her rise. In earlier seasons, Cami's silence was read as restraint. Viewers saw her as someone with a moral line, someone who understood the human cost of the oil business even if she couldn't always stop it. When chaos erupted, she wasn't the one causing it. She was the one standing nearby, reacting calmly, often offering solutions after damage was already done. This made her feel safe, trustworthy, almost protective. But silence is never neutral. It's a choice as the seasons progressed. Small details began to matter. Cami didn't interrupt bad ideas early. She didn't challenge reckless decisions when she had the chance. Instead, she waited. Not because she didn't see the danger, but because intervening too soon would expose her hand. Letting others fail created openings she could later step into. This is where her evolution truly begins. Cami learns the system by letting it run. She studies how blame moves, how responsibility is passed downward, and how consequences rarely reach the people at the top. She sees that survival in this world isn't about being right. It's about being insulated, protected by layers of distance and clean explanations. So she adapts rather than fighting power directly. Cami aligns herself close enough to influence it, but far enough to avoid ownership of its worst outcomes. She becomes someone others rely on for clarity, not realizing that clarity itself can be shaped. By the time people notice patterns forming, decisions have already been made. Season 3 pushes this transformation forward. Circumstances change. Old. Leadership weakens. Confidence turns into desperation. And suddenly, Cami's calm presence becomes essential. People start asking her what to do, not because she demands control, but because she feels like the only one who understands the full picture. That's the shift. She moves from observer to architect. Her power no longer comes from reacting wisely after chaos. It comes from setting conditions where chaos works to her advantage. She doesn't create disasters outright. She allows risky paths to stay open. She delays interference. She frames dangerous options as necessary ones. And when things go wrong, she isn't blamed because she never forced the choice. Cami's evolution is subtle, but it's deliberate. She stops seeing herself as part of the problem and starts seeing herself as the solution, even when that solution costs lives. In her mind, people become numbers. Outcomes become statistics. Loss becomes acceptable if it protects stability at the top. What makes this transformation unsettling is that nothing about her behavior feels dramatic. There's no sudden cruelty, no emotional outburst, just a steady narrowing of concern, a quiet decision to prioritize structure over humanity. By season 3, Cami isn't acting out of fear or anger. She's acting out of belief that she understands the system better than anyone else. Belief that her choices prevent greater collapse. Belief that sacrifice is unavoidable as long as it isn't hers. This is how she becomes dangerous. Cami's greatest advantage has never been money, position, or influence. It has always been perception. People believe she is fair. They believe she is careful. And most importantly, they believe she has limits. This belief allows her to move freely without suspicion, even as her decisions begin shaping outcomes in darker ways. Throughout the series, Cami is framed as the voice of reason. When tempers flare, she stays calm. When others rush toward risky deals, she slows the conversation. This creates an image of someone who values safety and balance. Over time, that image becomes armor. No one questions motives when the person appears morally grounded. But morality can be performed. Cami understands that people don't look for proof of goodness. They look for comfort, and she provides it through tone, body language, and timing. She doesn't push ideas aggressively. She introduces them gently, wrapped in concern and logic. By the time others agree, they believe the idea was their own. This is how trust becomes a tool. Instead of commanding loyalty, Cami collects it. She listens to frustrations. She validates fears. She positions herself as the only one who truly understands the risks everyone else ignores. In doing so, she becomes the safe place where doubt is allowed and then quietly redirected. Her morality feels real because she never lies outright. She simply omits. She focuses on certain details while letting others fade into the background. When danger is discussed, she speaks in general terms. When consequences are raised, she distances herself from the specifics. This keeps her hands clean while still guiding the direction of events. Season 3 leans heavily into this dynamic. As pressure increases and mistakes pile up, people become desperate for stability. Cami steps into that gap. She offers calm plans, framed as damage control rather than ambition. She presents difficult choices as unavoidable, positioning herself as the one willing to make them for the greater good. This is where the illusion becomes dangerous, because once someone is seen as moral, their decisions are rarely challenged. Questions feel unnecessary. Doubt feels disloyal. Even when outcomes are harmful, the assumption is that there was no better option. That assumption protects Cami more than any contract or legal shield ever could. She doesn't need to defend herself. Others do it for her. What makes this illusion so effective is that Cami believes it too. She doesn't see herself as a villain. She sees herself as responsible, as someone doing what others are too weak or too emotional to do. In her mind, restraint has been replaced with necessity, and necessity excuses everything. By positioning herself as morally sound, Cami avoids the emotional weight of her choices. She doesn't see faces when consequences hit. She sees systems stabilizing. She sees crises contained. The human cost becomes abstract, something acknowledged but never truly felt. This distance allows her to escalate without resistance. People trust her because she never appears hungry for power. But power doesn't always look like hunger. Sometimes it looks like patience. Sometimes it looks like someone waiting for others to fail before stepping forward with clean hands and reasonable solutions. By the time anyone realizes what's happening, the damage is already done. Not because Cami moved too fast, but because she moved so slowly that no one noticed the direction changing.